What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we're going to be discussing All Will Be One. This is a very interesting card. It also has the distinction of being the titular mythic in Phyrexia All Will Be One, and this particular mythic has a very powerful ability on it that is pretty easy to resolve if you're playing online. If you're on Magic the Gathering online or Arena, it's going to be pretty easy to just kind of dance with this and do your thing, but in paper, it might be a little tricky to actually properly resolve this card when it's doing its thing. So today I want to discuss, how does All Will Be One work? So the text on All Will Be One is, whenever you put one or more counters on a permanent or player, All Will Be One deals that much damage to target opponent, creature an opponent controls, or planeswalker an opponent controls. So you hit them or their stuff, and you get to pick whatever that is. You can't target your own stuff, which is, you know, like, generally speaking, like, it is a lack of an option, because like maybe you have a creature that has a cool death trigger and I'd love to be able to target this, and you can't, but you can always go face, which is nice. So at the end of the day, you can at least laser blast your opponent in the face. So the way that this works is every time you put a counter onto a permanent, you get to deal 1 damage to an opponent. Now, if you add 5 counters to a permanent for some reason, you can deal 5 damage to an opponent or one of their things. Now, this gets especially weird when you start proliferating, or, you know, or in general, add multiple counters to multiple things. So if you proliferate and you have, say, 2 planeswalkers and a creature with a +1/+1 counter, just 3 permanents with counters, you proliferate. Now, 3 separate permanents all got 1 counter. It is very easy to assume, okay, that means I can deal 3 damage to a thing, right? That's actually not how it works. Instead, you can deal 1 damage 3 separate times. So you have the ability to spread the love and target as many different things as you want. Also of note, it doesn't care if you are proliferating and adding the counters to your stuff or your opponent's stuff. Now, if your opponent is adding counters to their stuff, this does not trigger. If you add counters to your opponent's stuff, it does. So if your opponent is sitting there with, say, a Reckoner Bankbuster or something with an oil counter that just happens to have a counter on it, you proliferate, you can choose to add an additional counter to their thing, and you will get additional damage. So, you know, you will get a trigger off of that. But again, if it's a proliferation situation, you know, you add 1 to one of their permanents, you get 1 added to, you know, you get 1 trigger of All Will Be One. So the effect is very powerful, and it can result in a lot of damage being dealt in a pretty short period of time if you're doing stuff. Also, this is also adding permanents to players. So as a result, if you get an experience counter, you get a trigger off All Will Be One. If you get an energy counters for any reason, that triggers All Will Be One. So your Aether Flux Reservoir decks, all of a sudden, All Will Be One becomes a secondary win con potentially, which is kind of fun. So be aware of that. Additionally, if you're adding poison counters to your opponent, that triggers All Will Be One. So if you get in with a toxic creature or an infect creature in older formats, all of a sudden, you not only connect and add the poison counters to their life total, or to them, which I'm sure they are not happy about, but additionally, you get to blast potentially one of their creatures or planeswalkers for whatever that damage is. So if you have, you know, if you have a toxic 2 creature and they have a 2 loyalty planeswalker, don't attack that planeswalker. Go straight for their face. If they don't block and it gets through, you get like 2 toxic, you know, 2 poison counters to them and then 2 damage to the planeswalker. Sweet. Like, it does exactly what you're looking for. Also of note, this does trigger off of permanents entering with counters on them. So planeswalkers, you all of a sudden, like, you cast something like a Narset Parter of Veils, whose starting loyalty is 5. You just get a free 5 damage to whatever you want the moment this is online. That gets incredibly powerful. It also works great with Hydras, or cards like Stonecoil Serpent, where they have the X in their mana value and they enter with X counters. Those all trigger All Will Be One. Now in that case, say I pay 5 mana for a Stonecoil Serpent. It enters the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters. All Will Be One will recognize there's 1 permanent with 5 counters, and I will get to deal 5 damage to 1 target. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. So this card is great. I highly recommend brewing around it. Like, especially if you're like messing around in Arena, you can do some really busted stuff with this. Also, I do actually have a deck that leverages All Will Be One. So if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please do so. I will be doing a deck tech on that in the not too distant future. It is leveraging this and the Ichor Moon Gauntlet. It gets super weird. You won't want to miss it. But yeah, so that's it. All Will Be One. Very powerful card. the number of targets that you get to select are equal to the number of permanents that you're adding stuff to. That's the... I tried to make it simpler, and I think I just made it more complicated. But in any event, when you proliferate, because that's one of the keys that really makes this card incredible. When you proliferate, you get 1 damage, and you get to select the target for each 1 damage for every permanent you have. It's fantastic. Anyway, thanks so much for checking out the video. I appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.